images. I tend to talk about images a lot. I've given a lot of talks around images, specifically around web performance. But I thought in some of my research, I found like an opportunity to sort of step away from web performance specifically and still talk about images, and that is in the sort of realm of accessibility. I consider web performance and accessibility both dark arts, and I enjoy both. But in my travels, I sort of went performance first, but I do love a good accessibility discussion. That being said, I'm professing my love for images. Why? Well, images are the ultimate storytelling tool. Pick the medium like print, whatever, video, internet. Things are a lot different. The story is a bit richer when you add images to it. And in fact, I'm going to bore you with a quick little detail. I just mentioned I work in web performance, and we talk about metrics a lot and a lot of raw numbers. But in some of our metrics, like something, say, the speed index, we have a coordinating graphic to explain the actual index at that time. And that very graphic could tell the entire story of the challenge outside of the actual metrics. So I was thinking about this yesterday. They are the ultimate storytelling tool. And, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, we've heard that before, I think a great photo is worth 1,001 words. Let's look at a few. Some of my faves, by the way. Now, I believe I'm in Atlanta, and this photo is from the Atlanta 96 Games. The winner right there at the front, a French legend by the name of Marie-Josée Pérec. She won here the 200 meter. I don't say she was a favorite, but people knew it was going to be a good race. She is, by training, a 400 meter runner, but she basically surprised the world with this race. It's amazing. You should watch it on YouTube. It's so fun. Anyways, she beat Merlene Ottey from Jamaica, and the young lady at the far left is a runner from Nigeria who was lunging to try to get third place, which she did. And she also bailed. But this is a powerful photo. I remember finding it online and remembering the race, and I'm like, wow, whoever caught this must be just proud of themselves. It really tells the story of a great race. Here's another photo of Shericka Jackson. She won the 200 meter in a 21:45 time, which is the second greatest and fastest time in the history of 200 meter sprinting in the women's. And again, you can see the powerful image here, knowing she won. And she came with this amazing time. And awesome is her teammate on the left-hand side, Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, who was obviously, she came in second, but knew what had happened, and she was super happy for her. There are other photos of them hugging. But again, this is a very powerful photo. And it'd be hard to really describe without seeing, right? Lastly, I'm just going to throw this one up. I'm a bit of a space buff. Guilty as charged. This was the Mars lander, and I was just freaking out because we were able to see on the left was a shot of the lander which was about to hit the Mars ground, if you want to call it that. And they had another camera pointing up. And so that's basically the Mars sky. And it was my first time seeing it, and I think for many others who are watching the live stream, but this was amazing. And I remember thinking to myself, like, what just happened right here? Shots from the lander traveled through space, made it to the planet, and somehow made it to the internet, at some point. So again, not having seen this, you wouldn't believe it. And to me, that's another powerful shot. Video is even crazier because when it was landing, you saw like the dust flying and everything like that. It was super awesome. A little side note, shout outs to anyone here that works in open source, or I'm sure you've used open source tools. This was processed by FFmpeg on the device and a computer running Linux, and I remember during the press conference, they're like, shout out to open source. I was like, wow, open source took us to Mars, man. It's exciting. Sorry, I get amped up about photos. So that being said, we have to realize that we really appreciate photography. We appreciate photos, and I think it's been proven over the years. We upload over 3 billion images a day. Now, granted, quite a few of them are probably memes, but the point is that we are communicating with photography, with photos. This is something that we absolutely enjoy. And when we can't, we get a little angry. For those who have ever tried to share HEIF files from your iPhone, because I've seen you get angry on Twitter. And you can just Google that, search on Twitter or even WebP, people got angry. They're like, I can't share this. What kind of format is this? Get this out of here. But that's a separate story. But we have to ask ourselves, how did we get here? How did we come to the point where we absolutely need photos to share? We want to share our experiences with photos. Well, it's starting here with RFC 1866. HTML 2.0 was introduced, but with that, we introduced the image tag in 1995. So the image tag is essentially 27 years old. And that was essentially the beginning of a lot of different things. At the time, and you can dig this up, but Mark Andreessen, there's an email chain publicly available where they talk about introducing images to the net. And there was this back and forth as to whether that should happen or not. Super, super duper interesting. But either way, that was one of the reasons that we ended up getting images online. The other reason is this one right here. Does anyone know who this is? I think, those medals that you get from the president, like the medals of whatever it's called, achievements, I don't know. This is Steve Sasson, former Kodak engineer, and he is holding the very first digital camera ever. He is responsible for it. It weighed 8 pounds. Rest assured, it will not fit in your pocket. But this was the beginning of digital photography. It used to save the photos to a cassette tape, by the way, for those who remember what that is. All right? But yeah, I like to bring this up because this really was the start of digital images, and eventually they made it to the net. So images are absolutely crucial in our daily existence, in our daily lives. The Refactor Tech Conference, the organizers, I'm sure they looked at shots of the venue first, to make sure that things were cool. We need images for dating apps. If we don't, let me know, because I'd like to see that. We need images for shopping apps, because you're going to get some clothes for this hot date you're going on. We need images for the restaurant that you're going to take your date to, potentially, lay out pictures of the food, et cetera, et cetera. You need images of the 5-star hotel that you may hang out at after your date. I don't know. I'm just saying. But ultimately, like I said, images were introduced in 1995 with the RFC I mentioned. And with that came an image attribute, which was, or is, the alt tag. That being said, we're going to talk about that. So I want to welcome everyone to a conversation about alt text that I'm calling fault text. And it is a talk about the adversities in automated alternative text, because this is something that's starting to take place. Formalities. My name is Henri. That is my real name. My Twitter handle is Henri Helvetica, which is a non plume. But I do answer to it, believe it or not. I work at this company called Web Page Test. It's an open source web performance tool. We actually surface some accessibility data. We're not sure how to position it yet, so we don't really readily talk about it, but it's available if you dig around. And I'm from the greatest city on the planet, which is Toronto, Canada. If you make it up there, ring me up. If I'm speaking to all Americans here, we have a sale going on. The American dollar is pretty strong. So it's going to feel like BOGO, okay, when you're up there. So anyhow, so today's talk, if you want to go to this bit.ly right here, bit.ly fault_text_refactor_22, you'll be able to take a look at the slides right now. If you don't get that, it's at the bottom left of every slide, the majority at least. And if you forgot who I was, my name's at the bottom right, the majority of the slides as well. So, as I mentioned moments ago, images are actually crucial, indispensable. They provide fantastic user experience as well as engagement. You know, it's probably the reason why, and again, I speak mostly in web performance circles, but I think I talked about this in this workshop I had on Wednesday. The majority of sites right now are images by weight, data. People stuff images on their pages all the time. Again, I think it's proof that they want to make sure that there's a visual element in explaining whatever they're trying. Now, if a picture of a tree is on a web page and no one can see it, does it make a sound? In a perfect world, it will, and we're going to talk about that. Story time. Now, I consider myself, pretty able-bodied. I can, my vision's pretty good. My hearing's great. But bottom line is, I actually use assistive technology, or AT, as we like to call it. And I do this all the time. I started to, out of mild laziness, but I use screen readers to read articles and blog posts and newspapers. And at the same time, I can clean the kitchen, right? So I have VO going, voiceover, and it's like, and I'm, oh, really, that happened? Okay. It's almost like listening to radio, listening to Siri. But that's when I actually discovered that I was the victim of missing alternative text, or alt text, because I would get to this image and I would just hear madness, And for those who, by show of hands, anyone use voiceover assistive technology? Like, I'm telling you, you will get to that image and it's kind of like, what am I hearing right now? And you're trying to skip it and you're like, oh my God, like, how do I get past this? And you forget like the gestures and stuff. But it's actually a big problem. Now, what is alternative text? Well, if you look at RFC 1866, it'll say the following. It's text to use in place of referenced image resource, for example, due to processing constraints or user preferences. User preferences here is really the important part. But they talked about processing constraints. Well, what could that be? Well, it could be a bad network where the image hasn't come up yet. But if your alt text is there, that will be in place for anyone using assistive technology will be able to use. Some people actually surf the internet, believe it or not, with images off for a variety of reasons, like data costs. They're like, I don't really need that, because again, that's more on the performance side. Images are not sized properly a lot of the times, and people are just like eating up their data plans for like an image they didn't want to see, say. So these are things that, you have to start to consider when, using images in your day-to-day. So once again, if images are indispensable, all text, absolutely the same case. Now, why would that be? Well, it comes down to this, the human visual system. It's really what drives everything that we do. If you cannot see very well on the internet is a lot different than what we know right now. It comes down to the human eyesight. Everything's interconnected. Now, let's look at some data, shall we? Let's paint a picture. So 2+ billion people live with some sort of visual impairment worldwide. Now, a lot of people make the mistake when they think of accessibility and visual impairment, they just immediately think of blindness. They're like, oh, they can't see. Well, that's not the case. Impairment could be, having to wear even like the lightest prescription eyewear, right? Obviously, things can get a little wilder when you need a heavier prescription, but let's look at some data here. So I may refer to BVI a few times because blind, visually impaired, multisyllabic, I may trip that up, so I'll say BVI for short. But this is what it looks like across the world. Nearly 30% of people have some sort of visual impairment. This is the kind of data that you want to keep in mind. And in fact, USA is among the top 5 countries with the highest number of people with BVI. Now, these are the kind of data points where, again, people will think of, it must be potentially like emerging markets and things like that, because, we have technology here. We have, like, you go to the doctors and, you can have everything sort of, dealt with. But that's not the case. It's not all these, all sort of like emerging markets or low-income countries. BVI is quite often very preventable, right? So these things can pop up in places you would not expect it. Now, let's look at another chart here and sort of go through an age group of how BVI, see that? Is that clear at all? I don't think so. Okay. Just kind of driving a point home there, I'm sorry. So, impairment is not linear. That's what you want to keep in mind. And if you're squinting right now, like if you feel like leaving, no, but seriously, it is not a linear graph. And, by your 30s and, mid-30s, things might start to look a little different. All right. I was telling this to someone recently. I'm a runner, a bit of a distance runner, and I have this route that I take virtually all the time, And I remember I hit this one intersection. I know the street, and I was thinking to myself, like, if I was not from here and I didn't know my way around, I would not know what street name this is, because I actually could not see it that well. Now, granted, it was from a distance and stuff, but I knew things were different, And this is what's happening. And again, I get back to the idea that you do not have to be specifically blind to have any kind of BVI. I personally think I actually have it right now. Like, I know my vision's not the same. I go do some takeout at restaurants right now. Those menus on the screen, I'm just like this. Excuse me, I just need to get to the front. I'm like, fries. Yeah, this is what's happening. So let's look at some WebAIM data. Anyone familiar with WebAIM? So it's web accessibility in mind. It's a company that deals with accessibility, data, et cetera, et cetera. And they mentioned that 70% of screen reader users are aged between 21 and 60. 70%. Hands up if you're not in that age group. Okay, I thought so. Now, I don't claim that this is a crystal ball, like this is what your future is going to look like. But I know I'm bad, I'm sorry. However, these are data points you want to keep in mind, okay? And in fact, 38% of screen reader users are aged between 21 and 40 years of age. I won't get into the hands up question here. Privacy, what do you guys call it? HIPAA? Something like that? Yeah. So, as we keep going, 60.6% of landing pages were missing alt text in the images. And again, I get back to the fact that if you're a screen reader user, this is not going to be a pleasant experience. And in fact, the experience is going to be something like this. Lorem ipsum, I can't read the rest, .jpg. That's what it's going to sound like. And honestly, go into like the majority of pages and it'll be a variety of alt text. It could be like automated because they'll give you like the file name, or it could be a bunch of numbers, but suddenly it'll end with JPEG. You're like, that did not make any sense. Now, here's some more data in terms of like improper alt text, because some stuff can be automated by a framework using whatever it may be. A lot of them end with these image file types. .jpeg, most of the time. PNG, JPEG again, interesting spelling. Even the GIF. I've never heard an SVG in alt text, but apparently it happens. All right? And another piece of data, pages containing the attribute with the file extension. Now, it's 7%, but that's still quite a bit. Almost 1 out of 10, or we'll say probably 1 out of 12 will end like that. Again, I want these data points I want to show these so that it starts to ring home what's happening online. So people have been talking about like, well, how do you solve this? How do you solve the idea that people are not just naturally adding alt text? In web performance, we talk about, how do you tackle web performance? Well, there's some automation there, that'll optimize your images and things like that. But what's happening with alternative text? Well, we're trying that. And the only way to try that, like I said, we do optimization with images. We can optimize the deployment through some automation. We can optimize and automate the testing. And in fact, this is actually a little funny. We even automate pizza delivery, right? Domino's Pizza, I guess the self-driving neuro vehicles, or what they call autonomous zero occupancy delivery vehicles. That's the legal name. But, for alternative text, computer vision came around, or CV for short. And for those, I'm sure most people are familiar with computer vision, but by definition, I like this one right here. Computer vision is a field of artificial intelligence, AI, that enables computers and systems to derive meaningful information from digital images. And that's courtesy of International Business Machines, also known as IBM. But, we use computer vision in a lot of different things, like agriculture. They can take shots and to see if there's foreign stuff growing on food. We use CV in healthcare. A little scary, mind you, but it's happening. Anyone familiar with this app called Figure One? It's in the medical profession. It's pretty cool. I'll describe it as Instagram for the medical profession. It's pretty scary, actually. You know, a friend of mine used to work there, but we're no longer friends. No, just playing. We use CV in driverless vehicles. I mean, some of you probably own one of these vehicles right now. Just be careful. And now we're starting to use CV in alternative text. And we're going to talk about that. Computer vision is not easy. There's actually a talk going on right now on I think machine learning or ethics or something like that. But I think they kind of cover some of this. And computer vision is hard, and we needed data sets. And the biggest treasure trove of pictures that humans have ever created is where we work, the internet, as I'm sure you know. But we needed a data set to really feed the computer vision. And that came in the form of ImageNet some years back. 50 million photos, 22,000 categories. But again, computer vision, it is full of immense challenges that we have a lot of big companies out there working on them. On a hardware level, you know, things can be really intensive. You know, we know video's an issue. This is no secret, facial recognition, a big challenge there. And again, I mentioned there's a talk, you know, going on next door. Hopefully you'll be able to watch that because I thought it might be a really good compliment to, or I might compliment their talk more. But two of the big players here, Facebook and I'll say Google, but specifically with Chrome, because Chrome, the browser, is the what people use, essentially. And Facebook as well has been doing a lot of research in this space. And they also have been automating the alt text. So now let's look at some examples. You know, I really wanted to do, I've done this, I introduced this talk years ago, and I remember I was like so optimistic, and I did like a live demo. And even without internet, demo gods are not always the friendliest. So I will spare you that part. So let's look at some of these examples that I remember I went through. So let's look at this picture right here. It's a young lady. She's in a sort of athletic pose, kind of like coming out the blocks. Her name is Dina Asher-Smith, actually. She's a Olympian medalist out of the UK. Now, I'll be looking at the alternative text that was provided by Google Chrome, as well as Instagram, a Facebook, a Meta company. And here's what happened. On Instagram, it said, may be an image of one or more people and people playing sports. Okay, the sports part kind of worked out, I suppose. And on Chrome, appears to be person competes with person during event girl. That's literally what it said, all right? Now, there are two issues here. One of them is that the clear issue is like it's not really painting the picture that we want, all right? I think the other issue is the fact that they're kind of both different, you know what I mean? And that's actually fairly, I don't say they're close, but again, either way, you're not really getting the picture, the full picture anyways. Here's another one right here. I mean, I'll spare you who these gentlemen are, but one of them is Paul Chelimo, another Olympian. So two gentlemen, shirtless, running on a track. Lane one, grass. trees. Here's what happened. Now, Instagram said maybe an image of two people playing sports and people standing and outdoors. That's literally what it said. All right, they got the two people right. Can we get an applause for that? But afterwards, again, did not paint the picture. And then Chrome appears to be athletes running in a race. All right, Chrome, let's go. Sprint, long distance running, literally. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But again, make of it what you will. Oh man, I forgot the other slide. So this one right here, I'm a bit of a rally car racing type. And this one said for Instagram, maybe an image of car and road. Not too bad. Appears to be automobile make in the race touring car racing, Porsche 911 GT2, Porsche 911 GT3. Now, a little better. Now, Chrome has been using, likelihood, sort of like going to the cloud and just their trove of like images and data and, previously, labeled content. So they were able to do that. I see what happened here. I'm sorry, I should have had this flipped around. That was the next slide. But, I will say in more recent times, it's gotten a little better in certain cases, but again, it's not always a hit. Now, this next example is a really important one. And again, this will, drive the point home that this is full of challenges. I'm going to put up the resultant alt text first. So, it said, maybe an image of one person, hair, standing, and outerwear. Okay, now think of what that might be. Just close your eyes. Now, Chrome said, appears to be Afro. Now you're confused. You have no idea what's happening. So I hope everyone's got their seatbelt buckled up. I heard that. All right? In 3, 2, 1. Pow! I just have to trigger out for a second. This is dead serious. Pardon me? Yeah. This is really what happened. I remember just saying, like, there's no way. Yes way. Any idea who that is, by the way? We have a winner. Chicken dinner, whatever how it goes. This is what happened. Literally. And this gets back to the whole bit about facial recognition and a lot of like the sort of anger that was created through this reliance on computer vision that was starting to take place. And it is full of these little, traps. The computer's like, I don't know what's going on, and putting out content like this. Now imagine, having to hear this when you're trying to figure out what's going on with the image. It's not happening. Even Russell Wilson was mad, for those who got that. I get back to this definition from IBM. Computer vision is a field of artificial intelligence that enables computers and systems to derive meaningful information from digital images, in bright yellow. When you get a hot minute, head over to Fault Text, a demo. This is something I whipped up some time back. Some other examples that I had that you'll be able to sort of like hear and just be like, wow, what happened there? This is a little bit along the lines of the photo of the pregnant woman. So this is from an article in the New York Times, and they talked about, again, CV, and they talked about how gender was misidentified in up to 1% of light-skinned males, okay? Gender was misidentified in up to 7% of light-skinned females. Gender was misidentified in up to 12% of dark-skinned males. Gender was misidentified in up to 35% of dark-skinned females. Now, take that in through all the little hurdles that we saw already, and we didn't even get into this space yet. I forget the actual stat, but the majority of images online are, or a large proportion are, selfies. I remember I had the stat, lost it, but I'll see if I can dig it up again. Think about that. And we know selfies are everywhere. So what kind of solution do we need? Well, we need better data sets. That's without a doubt. And that's one of the hurdles that's keeping CV from being as competent or, having confidence in CV, the confidence that we want anyhow. There have been more data sets since ImageNet, because that was one of the earliest ones. But we still need more of them to train the computers properly. In order for them to sort of exceed, human performance, which is going to be very hard to do. People don't realize how well prepared, well trained we are as humans. From the age of 3 or 4, we have seen so many images in 2 or 3 years of our life that it is hard to match. But ultimately, we want to make sure that we write good alt text. Or not even write alt text, we want to write good alt text. Or should I say great? I don't know if many of you are on Twitter, but Twitter has had this campaign of trying to get more people to add alt text to their images. And I started doing that a couple years ago, just making the effort. And I think about 3 or 4 months ago, they sort of finally deployed some measures to have people add alt text. They'll actually sometimes give you a little warning. Because as Leonie Watson, an accessibility engineer at the UK, said, a good alt text can conjure up wonderfully stimulating mental images. Because, as she mentioned in that blog post, emotions absolutely matter. And the one thing that I remember in a survey of people using assistive technology, what they said was they want details. That's the number one request that they made in getting alt text. They absolutely want details. So from a human perspective, when you're writing alt text, you're not going to be like, person wearing shoes. They'd like to get some details. Location, is the CN Tower in behind? Okay, this person's in Toronto, or La Tour Eiffel. Okay, they're in Paris. So details matter, but ultimately emotions matter too. The photos that I showed you in the very beginning, Marie-Josée Pérec throwing herself across the line, that's like an emotional moment for her. When you saw Sharika Jackson jump for joy crossing that finish line with 200, 21:45, that was a hugely emotional moment for her. Second fastest race in the history of women's sprinting. So that being said, I just want to thank everyone for sticking around. I enjoy, like I said, images. I enjoy, sharing my interest in images, and that went from web performance to accessibility. And I hope that you take some of this data back with you when sharing with your teams, letting them know how important alt text is. And lastly, I just want to thank what I call Team Bay. Oh, you can't even see it that well. I'm sorry. Yes, the whole team there. They're awesome. Beth, Angel, and Erica. They invited me here again, and I just want to say merci. If you have any questions, let me know. On the slides, these are links. You're not supposed to be able to read them like that right now, but when you get the PDF, you should be able to. If you have any questions, hit me up on Twitter. Like I said, my name is Henri Helvetica. You can hit me up at that handle right there. And if you want those slides, they're at the bottom left. Thank you. Any questions? Good. No, I'm just playing. Yes, at the
I'm just curious, like, some of the folks I work with are journalistic outlets, so they have tons of images, right?
Yep.
And yet they spend a tremendous amount of time editing copy too. It's been not that hard to get them on board with at least writing something for alt text. And I'm curious what the justification or application of automating alt text is. Like, people put so much care into even marketing copy. Like, why? And this may be for anyone in the room too. Like, why would you automate it and end up with this garbage?
Well, okay. So the idea is, the question would be like, why would you want to automate alt text? I think it's realizing that people are not adding, so it's an idea knowing that computer vision is improving, also knowing that the majority of developers do not add alt text, and understanding that it's important. And again, I use the example of web performance and image optimization. That was not being done, so they're creating some automation around it so that you don't have to think about it and it'll just be done for you. And they're trying with the computer vision to get some automated alt text, but we're not getting great results. And I would say you don't have to take my word for it. Go out and try it yourself. Go turn on VoiceOver and you're going to hear craziness. And this has been going on forever. They're trying to change it. It's essentially, it's hard to automate, and it's about just understanding that it just has to be added. Even if it's like you cut and paste something into it and move on, that can be done. Granted, at a journalistic outlet, like I had the young lady from New York Times, a little tougher, but something's got to be done. Any other questions? Really? Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much. And I'll be around if you want to talk to me privately.